Stephen King's impact on the horror genre is undeniable. With bestsellers like It, The Shining, and Carrie, his stories have become cultural touchstones. His knack for creating relatable characters and placing them in terrifying situations has set a high standard for horror storytelling. This is certainly true with the numerous adaptations of his work, both on the big and small screen, as well as other mediums. King's had such a degree of impact on pop culture at large that his oeuvre has its own specific vibe. For example, when I say something is Spielbergian or Hitchcockian, you know exactly what I mean almost right away. However, the success of these adaptations have led to a wave of unofficial films that borrow heavily from King's plot. In this video, I want to talk about specific King film adaptations, then a movie that is a copycat of sorts. I won't be including movies that, as I mentioned above, simply have that King vibe to it, yet still remains its own movie. Hell, I'll even allow some similar visual cues or minor plot beats, because otherwise this would be a very long video. Carrie is a horror novel by Stephen King published in 1974. It's notable for being King's first published novel, as well as just being a classic of the horror genre. The story of Carrie revolves around the life of a young girl named, well, you guessed it, Carrie White, who discovers she possesses telekinetic powers. Whilst not an evil child, she finds that her ability is useful in getting revenge on those who have tormented her. The novel is renowned for its exploration of themes such as bullying, isolation, and the intense emotions of adolescence, thus giving the book a timeless feel. Despite it being so iconic, the novel was more of a sleeper hit, only over time becoming a bestseller. Carrie would make its leap to the big screen. The end result saw Brian De Palma at the helm directing what many believe to be his best film. On a budget of just a little over $1 million, the film has raked in over 30 at the box office, which doesn't include future home video release sales and merchandise. The movie has been referenced, spoofed, and remade, but the original stands as one of the best horror movies from the 1970s. Following similar beats to Carrie, the story sees the titular Jennifer, a young woman bullied by her peers in an elite boarding school. And, much like Carrie, Jennifer feels isolated and shunned. She soon discovers that she has psychokinetic abilities that allow her to control snakes. Driven by a desire for retribution, she uses this power to exact a fierce and calculated revenge against those who have wronged her. Jennifer was a flop at the box office, making a little over $1 million, which was basically what its budget was. The critics weren't too kind either, and they certainly didn't shy away from calling out how similar it was to Carrie. Things, however, aren't too bleak for Jennifer, as the movie has developed a nice cult following over the years due to various home video releases. So this one, I have a honorable mention, which is Phenomena, and whilst I wouldn't say Dario Argento outright copied Carrie, its usage of a misunderstood girl picked on at school who has special powers is very Carrie-like, yet in typical bonkers Argento fashion, our heroine can control insects, and she only kind of pseudo gets some revenge on her bullies. So I think it's different enough to kind of sort of qualify. The Monkey is a short story by King that seemed to, for a while, fly under the radar. That is until the film adaptation from Longlegs director Osgood Perkins. Published in 1980, The Monkey tells the story of Hal, a middle-aged husband and father who discovers a toy monkey. However, he and this monkey have a long, dark past. Revealed in flashbacks, Hal recounts how the monkey has been in his his life since he was a small child, and throughout the years would randomly clap its symbols, killing various forms of life, including people, but as insignificant as a fly. Adding to the tension was the fact that Hal would never know who would die when the symbols echoed out. Now, in present day, Hal and his younger son attempt to bury the monkey once and for all. The story has been seen as a really interesting take on Edgar Allan Poe's The Murder in the Rue Morgue, swapping out a real monkey for a creepy toy version, which is pretty clever and is such a Stephen King thing to do. The film in question is The Devil's Gift, which itself has a really interesting history and bizarre legacy. Initially, the film was released in 1984 and didn't make that big of a splash. It was seen as another 80s horror movie that flew under the radar, making no lasting pop culture impact. For most movies, that's where the story would end. However, that would all change when in 1996, The Devil's Gift was cut down and the footage from it was woven into a pseudo kid-friendly weird anthology entitled Merlin's Shop of Mystical Wonders. This too would have been forgotten about had it not been featured in an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is such a stellar episode. The cut down segment in question really highlights the core plot of a father and son being confronted with a toy monkey wreaking havoc every time it claps its symbol. Ironically, watching the MST3K version led me to become aware of The Monkey by Stephen King, and that's probably true for a lot of other MST3K fans. I couldn't find anything in my research on King commenting or having any kind of lawsuit against The Devil's Gift, which is kind of wild because it is very similar. The Lawnmower Man is a really tricky entry because, sure, it technically does bear the name of Stephen King based off his short story from 1975. But things get a little bit trickier. The plot of the story is about a killer lawnmower with some folk horror elements sprinkled throughout for good measure. In the film version, a childlike man named Job is the titular Lawnmower Man and has his intelligence enhanced by a virtual reality game developed by a man named Lawrence. However, a byproduct is Job becomes evil and hell-bent on wreaking havoc. The Lawnmower Man sparked legal controversy due to its divergence from Stephen King's original story. The film, originally titled Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, was criticized by King himself for straying too far from his work. This led to a notable legal battle highlighting the importance of authorial rights and the challenges of adapting written work into film. In May 1992, Stephen King took legal action against the filmmakers, asserting that the movie bore no meaningful resemblance to his short story. King, known for his prolific writing and provocative nature over his work, felt that the film misrepresented his story, prompting him to sue for the removal of the name from the title. In July of 1992, a federal judge ruled in King's favor. This was a significant decision, marking the first successful case of its kind since James Oliver Cromwell's name was removed from the 1922 film I Am the Law. The ruling indicated that King's name should be removed from all advertising, though the on-screen credit could remain. Additionally, King was rewarded a $2.5 million settlement, reflecting the seriousness of the misrepresentation. Despite this, crazy to say, but New Line Cinema initially did not fully comply. They released a home video version with the title Stephen King's The Lawnmower Man, disregarding the court's directive. This resulted in further legal action, and in 1994, New Line was held in contempt of court for their failure to adhere to the ruling. Strangely, this is the only film that I could find that King actually took to court, and it wasn't even a copycat film, interestingly enough. enough, because I think King understands that this is just the nature of the beast. Everybody is influenced by everything around him. Hell, King himself pulls a lot from his own childhood influences and pop culture references at large. It's hard to quantify just how big of an impact Stephen King has made on the world of horror and by way of his film adaptations to the horror film genre. Carrie, The Shining, It are hugely famous as great literary works, sure, but also they are so iconic outside of the books. But when you take this level of success, you are bound to get imitators, and this is just a fun look at a few that maybe push this a little bit too far. But again, this is all in good fun and should be taken as such. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I have a Stephen King playlist if y'all want to check out some more of my videos, and thanks, and I will see y'all in the next one.